A question that I've gotten a lot since I purchased my 890 Adventure here and started making videos is, which one do I like better, right? Or which one is best? And a few of you guys have actually commented asking for a video kind of to compare and contrast the two bikes, right? And if there is a way to see if one is really better than the other, right? Or are they just in separate classes? So I've been thinking about it for a little bit, and kind of the conclusion I've come to is that they are in separate classes, but they're also, they overlap a lot in some classes too, right? So while the 890 Adventure is classified as a medium-sized adventure bike, and the 701 Enduro is a dual sport, they do still cross paths in a lot of areas, right? So the 701, a lot of people, including myself, say that this could very much be a small adventure bike with a little bit of outfitting, right? Or for some people, even without any outfitting, right? And most people will agree that the 890 Adventure is really just a great big dirt bike, right? So there's lots of areas where they excel, where they both excel. And there's some areas where one excels over the other for sure. So what I want to do in this video is attempt to kind of compare and contrast the two bikes, where their capabilities are, which, if possible, which one outshines the other in certain areas. And then hopefully as a consumer, you can decide yourself which one you think, if you could only have one, would be the best bike to have, right? Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is go over the specs of each bike, and that'll give us an understanding basically about at least what the manufacturers had intended for each of these motorcycles, okay? So the first thing we'll talk about is the ergos on the two bikes, okay? The seat height. On the 890 Adventure, the seat height is a 34.6 inch seat height. And on the 701 Enduro, it's a 36.8, so almost 37 inch seat height. So this bike is actually much taller than the 890 Adventure. For obvious reasons, or maybe not so obvious reasons, but reasons we'll get into here shortly. But at least for seat height, this is a taller motorcycle. The ground clearance on both bikes is almost identical, with the 890 Adventure being 10.4 inches and the Husky being 10.43 inches, right? So they are identical in ground clearance. The cockpits on the two bikes. The 890 Adventure actually has a cockpit, right? It has the 5-inch TFT, and it has a windscreen, and it really, it feels like a motorcycle that was designed to go on the road, whereas the Husky 701 has the same little display that all of their dirt bikes have, okay? Okay, the weight of the two motorcycles, quite a difference between the weight, obviously. The 890 Adventure R comes in at 473 pounds wet, and the Husky 701 comes in at 335 pounds without fuel or a dry weight, right? Now you add your 3.5 gallons of fuel, you're looking at about 363 pounds. add some coolant, add some brake fluid, add some 1.8 liters of oil, and you're adding a couple more pounds. But you can count on the Adventure R being over 100 pounds heavier than the Husky 701. The chassis and suspension. Let's talk about that a little bit, and you'll start to see where the delineation between the two motorcycles is. The wheelbase on the Adventure R is 60 inches, and the wheelbase here on the 701 is 59.5 inches, so almost identical in wheelbase. Now here's where we get to some differences. Now both of these motorcycles run a 21-18 wheel setup, okay? 21-inch front wheel and an 18-inch rear wheel. However, the difference is on the 890 Adventure, it is a 2.5 by 21 front wheel. On the Husky 701, it is a 1.85 by 21. The rear also wider on the Adventure, being a 4.5 inch wide rear wheel, and the Husky having a 2.5 inch wide rear wheel, okay? The Adventure R has tubeless tires, and the Husky comes with tubed tires. Let's see, we'll talk about some fuel capacity. The Adventure R has a 5.2 gallon gas tank, and the 701 has a 3.5 gallon gas tank. Okay, now we'll go over the suspension on these two bikes, which is where the differences kind of show. Both motorcycles run the WP Explorer 48 front forks and the WP Explorer rear shock. The Explorer forks on the Adventure R come with a 3-position preload adjuster, and the forks on the 701 Enduro do not have any preload adjustment. Now they do both have obviously rebound and compression adjustment, a full range of that on both the front and rear suspension. Big difference in suspension, however, is that the 890 Adventure R comes with 240 millimeters of travel, both front and rear. And the 701 Enduro has 265 millimeters of travel in the front and 250 in the rear. So as you can see, this bike is designed to soak up a lot more heavy off-roady kind of terrain than the 890 Adventure. Now, stopping power on both bikes are provided by Brembo brakes, okay? The 890 Adventure R has a 4-piston floating caliper on both sides of the front wheel, whereas the 701 only has the left side brake. The rotors on this bike are 320 millimeters in the front and 260 in the rear. And on the Husky 701, you're looking at a 300 millimeter single disc on the front and a 240 millimeter disc on the back. So obviously this bike has a whole lot more stopping power. Now it is 100 pounds heavier, but honestly, truth be told, between the two bikes, this bike does stop very quickly, much quicker than this bike. The engines are much different. The 890 Adventure R uses a 889 cubic centimeter parallel twin rated at 105 horsepower. And the 701 has a 692cc single-cylinder thumper motor rated at about 70 to 78 horsepower, depending on where you get your information from. Now, both motorcycles have an engine management system. The 890 Adventure R uses a Bosch EMS, and the 701 uses a Kian EMS, but they both handle power management. One of the key differences between the motors is that this single cylinder motor here has 2 spark plugs for its single cylinder, whereas the parallel twin uses a spark plug per cylinder. So they both have 2 spark plugs, but this one has 2 for 1 cylinder. Now the bikes actually have almost identical horsepower to weight ratio, with the 890 Adventure having a 1 horsepower to 4.5 pounds, and the 701 having 1 horsepower to 4.65 pounds. So they're almost identical in power to weight ratio. Both motorcycles have ABS with the 890 Adventure having an off-road ABS feature that you can select from the handlebar, and the 701 has an ABS function where you can turn off the rear wheel ABS so that you can block the rear wheel should you want to, and that's just by pushing a button that is located on the screen on the handlebars. All right, now that we've gone over the specs on both of these motorcycles, let's go more into the practical application of each bike and try to figure out which one is the best, okay? And I'm gonna tell you, that is very difficult to do. Now for the rest of this video, we're just gonna be talking about my experience on both of these bikes. And I've got an extensive amount on both bikes now. And that's what I will be referencing is my personal experience on both of these bikes when it comes to the different types of riding that we can do with these bikes, okay? So let's first talk about riding on the street. So if you are an adventure rider, most likely you are going to be spending some time on pavement, either leaving the house to get to that, dream area where you're going to ride dirt for 500 miles or whatever, or if you're just out for a daily ride. Obviously, the 701 is well, I'm not even going to say it's better on the street. I will say it's better on a highway, okay? If you're doing 75, 80 miles an hour, the windscreen on the 701, not a whole lot, but it is a windscreen, and it does offer some wind protection, right? The seat position on this bike is lower on the motorcycle, so you feel like you're sitting down into the frame of the motorcycle. Seat on the 701, it's a much taller seat, you're higher up away from the foot pegs, and it feels more, you're in more of an attack position like you would be riding a dirt bike. Now, highway speeds on the freeway, on open roads, what have you, the 890 is going to be much more comfortable at highway speeds. It has a much more planted front. It's a heavier bike, so it does feel more planted on the ground. I found on the 701 at 75, 80 miles per hour, the wind is an issue and my throttle hand gets pretty heavy. There are cruise control attachments you can buy for the bike. I do not have one, okay? So I'm trying to talk mostly about how these bikes come from the factory and not how people may outfit them, okay? So on the highway, lots of wind. This bike does not come with any sort of front windscreen or anything like that. It is narrower, both the front and rear wheels are narrower, so you get a lot more tendency to get a little bit of speed wobble. Mine, I can only speak for mine, at 75, 80 miles per hour, if I flick that handlebar just a little, I'm off to the races with some speed wobble. Also, the 701, you can safely estimate about 160 to 180 miles on a tank full of gas. And the 890, you're looking at about 225 to 250 miles on a tank full of gas. Now, I will say, I tend to run mine in Enduro mode or off-road mode on my Husky, and I get significantly less fuel because you get a lot more, you get a more direct throttle response out of that, and I like to wheelie around town and all that other stuff. So I am guessing, I usually run about 140 miles on a tank full of gas. So again, depends on how you're driving it. If you're in map 1, which is the more conservative map, you're going to get 160 to 180. Map 2, I'm getting about 140. With road riding and long distance riding comes luggage, right? So the 701 is fully capable of carrying luggage. Lots of people outfit it with a rack system. I have a Moscow Moto Reckless 40 liter system. A friend of mine runs an 80 on his. I think the 80 is a little bit too big for this bike. It tends to shift around on him a lot. So you are limited a little bit on luggage capacity or carrying capacity on this bike. Whereas with the 890 Adventure, you have a larger rear rack, you have a bigger bike, you have the opportunity to carry more luggage. Almost all of the manufacturers make their hard and soft bag, 80 liter, 85 liter rack systems for this bike, and it's a much more, it fits a lot better on this bigger bike, right? Okay, so now let's talk about riding on the dirt. If we're talking about miles and miles of dirt road, like farm roads and stuff like that, this bike, the 890 Adventure R, is going to be a much more comfortable ride for you because it's kind of akin to riding on the street, right? So this will be more comfortable than riding on this bike for hundreds of miles on farm roads or dirt gravel roads. Also, the 701 is lighter with thinner tires, so it does wash around a little bit more. If you're on hard packed with loose gravel on top of it going around corners at a speed, it does have a tendency to wash the front end a little bit. I have learned that I have to be ready to blip that throttle when I feel my front end start to kind of want to push on me a little bit, swing the back end out a little bit to help it kind of start tracking properly again. But otherwise, yes, this bike is going to be much more comfortable on long stretches of dirt road, the same as it's going to be more comfortable on long stretches of highway. When we get to more like trails, okay? I'm not talking dirt farm roads, I'm talking trails that have rocks, that have ruts, that have tree roots sticking out, stuff like that. I'm not talking single track, I'm talking your mountain passes here in Colorado. I'm talking about fire breaks, stuff like that. Both of these bikes absolutely excel in that kind of terrain. Now I have had both this 890 and this 701 on the mountain passes up in the San Juan Mountains here in Colorado. I've done, on both of these bikes, I have done Imogene, I've done California, I've done Cinnamon, I've done Engineer on both of these bikes, and they both handled it magnificently. I got no complaints whatsoever. My dog wants to get in on the act here a little bit. All right, you, go on. All right, I'm making a video, get out of here. And both, like I said, both of these bikes handled it fantastically. The year I brought this up there, I wanted to do Black Bear, it was closed. This past summer, I did Black Bear on this 890 Adventure. It was a workout, but I never went down. It handled everything, so I can't say that it was, really not up to the task. It handled it great. So, on mountain passes wide, even if they're, even chunky, difficult trails, as long as they're wide enough, this bike and this bike do a fantastic job. Now let's get into more technical stuff, okay? Here in my neck of the woods, we have an area called Rampart it has both single track and kind of two track. I wouldn't say it's quite two track, but it's not single track, all right? I did take this bike on it once. Wasn't a lot of fun. It's very loose, very sandy, not sandy, but like pebbly, right? With a lot of berms that give way and wash out. So this bike was not a whole lot of fun on that. This bike handles it very well, almost like a dirt bike. I think the problem with the 890 is it's just too heavy for certain kinds of trails, right? So when it comes to doing more technical, difficult trails, this bike is going to be a lot more easy to maneuver around. Now I want to caveat by saying that, I know guys like Chris Birch can take this bike anywhere he wants. I can't, and I don't think most of us can. So those are the people I'm talking to, right? So don't get me wrong. This bike is so capable in the hands of the right rider. It ain't this guy. So let's talk about some of the features of the bikes and how they relate to how good the bike performs on certain types of terrain and stuff like that. So the 890 Adventure, everybody knows by now, has the low slung tank, which makes it very well balanced. The 701 has the tank in the back over the rear wheel, which also makes it very well balanced, gives a little bit more traction to the rear of the bike than if it were otherwise had the tank in the front of the bike. The one big thing about the 890 Adventure having this low slung tank is if it falls over, makes it a lot easier to pick up, kind of like the BMW GS 1250. But between these two bikes, if both of them fall over, obviously this one is much easier to pick up. I'm gonna tell you, if you if you high side it down a hill and the seat is below 180 degrees, so the bike is kind of like this down a hill, because even with this, if it's a steep enough hill, you can still get the bike to be at a less than 180 degree angle. This is heavy. We're looking at 470 something pounds, 360 pounds. You do the math. It's not going to be as easy to pick this guy up as it is to pick this guy up. All right, practicality wise, the 890R has all of its adjustments can be made basically on the fly. There's nothing you have to do. You don't have to stop. You don't have to turn the motor out. There's nothing you have to do to this bike to make any of the engine management or brake ABS. There's nothing you have to do to adjust any of the engine management or the ABS controls on this bike as far as stopping, anything else. You can do it all on the fly from the handlebar. On the 701, you have two different buttons you have to push every time you start the bike if you turn the ignition to the off position, all right? But once you turn the ignition off, the bike automatically defaults to traction control on and ABS engaged. So in order to turn the traction control off, you have to push and hold the traction control button for exactly 5 seconds, which took me quite a while to get used to, but I have it down now to where I don't have to worry about it. And in order to turn the rear ABS off, you have to push and hold the ABS button for 4 seconds to turn that off. And now that you have to do every single time you turn the ignition key off. If you just hit the kill switch and leave the ignition key on, it will save that setting. So when you start the bike again, you'll still have that. But like I said, once you turn the ignition off, you have to redo the whole thing every time. You have your two maps. You have map 1 and map 2. Map 1 being a more conservative throttle response, and map 2 being your enduro off-road throttle response. You're going to get, in map 2, I believe, and there's a lot of confusion out there about this, but I believe in map 2, even without traction control turned off, you can still wheelie the bike moderately, right? So that you can get over obstacles and stuff like that. In map 1, it won't let that wheel lift off hardly at all. When you turn traction control off, you can loop the bike if you want to. There is no restriction on front wheel liftoff. In map 1, you can see the difference. It's much more difficult to get a wheelie out of map 1 than it is map 2. So you get a much more crisp, direct throttle response in map 2. So when you leave the road, get back on the highway, you have to remember to switch the map, which isn't hard. You just have to push the map button once, let off the throttle, and it will switch from map 2 to map 1, or vice versa. So that's just a small nitpick, not a big, huge deal. On the 890 Adventure R, you have different engine management modes. You have, if you have it unlocked with the tech pack, which I highly recommend you get, you have rally mode, you have off-road mode, you have street mode, or maybe it's sport mode, and you have the rain mode, okay? Within rally mode, you also have different different throttle responses you can choose. So in rally, you can choose rally throttle response, which is as direct a response from the throttle as you can get. You can choose off-road, which gives you a much tamer response, but if you still need more power, if you grab a handful of throttle, you will get it. You just don't get that instant response out of the throttle like you do in rally mode. But at any rate, the engine management system is all right there at your fingertips or at your thumb on the handlebar, right? And can be adjusted on the fly. I don't worry about any of it. I just leave it in rally mode, rally throttle all the time. The bike is so consistent, I don't have to worry about that really. So, but I'm not going to get too much into all of that stuff because this is not, it's kind of not germane to the discussion we're having right now, right? Because what we're trying to figure out is which bike's better for, it's the only bike I got, it's the only one I want, it's the only one I need, which is the best. So as you can see, both of these bikes handle a variety of different scenarios with almost identical sharpness, ability, and fun. The only conclusion I can draw as to which bike is better, okay, that depends on what do you want to do mostly. If you want to mostly roll down the highway on your way to dirt roads and the occasional, not even the occasional, but also some gnarly kind of two-track mountain passes, things like that, then this bike is going to probably do you better because it has greater over the horizon capability. This is a bike you can ride cross country on high speed avenues, all right, like highways, freeways, or just long stretches of pavement and dirt road. If you want to do maybe 100 to 200 miles a day of pavement and hit more kind of challenging dirt roads, I'm not saying that this bike is suitable for single track, although I'm sure there are people who can do it, but this is not the bike you want on single track. But if you are looking for more off-road adventure type of riding and you don't intend to be on the highway very often, this is the bike you're going to want, in this guy's humble opinion, okay? I don't have all the answers, but I do think that in that scenario, this is going to be a better bike for you. The other thing is the maintenance on this bike is just a little bit easier than on this bike, but it's not really a huge difference, okay? Otherwise, I'd say there's not a whole lot of things that either of these bikes can't do. They are both excellent, fantastic bikes. You just have to decide what you're going to do primarily, okay? So if anybody has anything they think I missed or they'd like to hear more of, or you just flat out disagree with me, please, please, please throw it in the comment section. I've learned a lot from people who comment to let me know just how little I actually do know, right? So there's always some growing that can be done. Some of it's a little painful. Some of you guys can be hurtful, but I try to get over it. But no, seriously, please drop a comment. Let me know what you think of the video. Let me know if you have anything to add, because I would love to make another video, kind of throwing some more information out there. All right, guys, well, hey, that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for checking it out. If you liked it, please give me a great big thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give me 2 thumbs up, all right? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Ring that notification bell so you get notified anytime I put out any new content. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day wherever you are, and I hope to see you guys out on the trail someday.